Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep underground, beneath layers of sand, stone, and stubborn imperial arrogance, to the kind of place that makes Indiana Jones movies look like a casual stroll through Home Depot. We're talking sealed tombs, golden coffins, and ancient warnings carved by hands that haven't moved in over 3,000 years. The air's dry, musty, and carries the scent of old stone and secrets. A flickering lantern throws shadows on crumbling walls, and you, for some reason, have chosen this exact moment to tiptoe into a chamber literally labeled "Do Not Disturb" in hieroglyphs. Good for you. You're about to relive the most unexpected archaeological jackpot of the 20th century, the discovery of King Tutankhamun's tomb. And yes, you'll soon be cursed, confused, and maybe a little itchy from phantom sand fleas. You probably won't survive the next hour without a snack. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Let's see who's the most sleep-deprived tonight. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stumble into the Valley of the Kings, November 1922. The sun's already done its best to bake every inch of you, and the sand underfoot feels like hot sugar. Your boots crunch over gravel as a gang of workers, Egyptian diggers led by a focused but cranky British archaeologist named Howard Carter, stop everything. One man's shovel hits stone, not rock, carved stone. They clear the dust, and there it is. A stairway descending into the earth, sealed off with ancient plaster. The entrance stamped with cartouches, royal seals, no one seen in over 3,000 years. Carter's hands shake, and honestly, yours do too. This isn't just another tomb, it's untouched. That never happens. By 1922, tomb robbers had beaten even time to the prize, but this is different. For weeks they dig with trembling anticipation. The whole world's been chasing the allure of lost Egyptian treasure, but this site, KV 62, is something else entirely. By late November, the stairway leads to a doorway, and that leads to another, and behind that, a moment that freezes in silence. Carter peers in by candlelight and utters that now famous line, though probably less cinematic than people imagine. Yes, wonderful things. He might as well have said, "I see more gold than the British Museum has tea." Inside are hundreds, yes, hundreds of objects. Gilded couches with lion legs, alabaster jars still smelling faintly like forgotten perfume, tiny coffins for the organs of a king.
And gold everywhere, a throne, a chariot, ceremonial daggers, one made of meteoric iron because apparently the boy king liked space metal. And the strangest part? The tomb's chaotic. Things are stacked like someone packed in a hurry. It
feels rushed. This wasn't some regal, meticulously prepared burial. It was more like a royal panic room. There's no grand corridor, no expansive treasure hall, just cramped, cluttered chambers like the world's fanciest storage unit. And the body? Well, that's in a nested set of coffins that feel like the Russian dolls of death. Gold within more gold. You eventually reach a black quartz sarcophagus and find him, Tutankhamun. Barely 18 when he died. A short, fragile reign. A forgotten name until now. You stand there, blinking, as every breath feels like inhaling powdered history. The walls of the burial chamber are painted with ritual scenes meant to guide the boy king through the afterlife. One image shows him embraced by Osiris himself. Another? He's being purified with a water jug held by his successor, who awkwardly may or may not have ordered his death, and yet even in this moment of awe you feel it, a hum in the air, like the tomb's not quite empty. Maybe it's the sheer weight of time, or maybe it's that tiny detail on the doorway seal, an inscription that loosely translates to "Death will come on swift wings to him who disturbs the king's peace." Charming. You shake it off. Maybe it's just ceremonial fluff. Pharaohs loved a bit of theatrical warning, like putting "Beware of dog" signs on a palace guarded by crocodiles. Still, a tingle crawls up your spine. And if you're thinking, curses aren't real, don't worry, so did everyone else. For now. Back on the surface, news spreads faster than a toddler with glitter. Within days, newspapers across Europe and the US scream headlines, "Lost tomb of boy king found intact." Tourists flood Egypt. Reporters stake out the dig site. Everyone wants a glimpse of the boy king who defied death, burial thieves, and time itself. And Carter? Well, he's thrilled but overwhelmed. Cataloguing the tomb will take over a decade. He has to be precise. One wrong move, one misplaced artifact, and the whole context could collapse. It's like playing a 3D puzzle with pieces made of centuries and ego. But something's off. A creeping suspicion settles over the camp like a desert fog. The tomb is too well hidden, too intact. How did this one escape plunder?
Why was it buried beneath another tomb's rubble? Theories swirl. Some whisper that the priests wanted it forgotten. Others think Tut's reign was so insignificant, no one cared to rob him. That's cold, even for ancient grave robbers. And
here's a detail that's less well known. Some of the items in the tomb, they weren't even made for Tut. His name's scratched over older inscriptions like a cheap name tag slapped on a borrowed coffin. Which raises the question, was his burial a rush job? Did someone else die first and Tut just took their seat in the afterlife? Historians still argue about that. Was he murdered? Did he fall from a chariot? Did he die of infection from a broken leg? Theories pile up like ancient dust on an unlabeled urn. One thing's certain, this was never meant to be a quiet discovery. As you watch the archaeologists sift through shattered pottery, bits of linen and gold amulets shaped like scarabs, a shadow seems to pass across the door again. Probably just a trick of the flickering torchlight. Or maybe not, because next comes a death, then another. And soon the phrase "Pharaoh's curse" will stop being a tabloid punchline and become something people whisper about in hotel bars after dark. But you're not there yet. Not quite. You're still surrounded by wonder. You can almost smell the oils seeping from the wooden shrines and feel the hush of 3,300 years pressing in on you like a velvet shroud. And as the night wraps around your shoulders, you can't help but think, what if you weren't supposed to be here? And what if something agrees? You don't remember falling asleep, but now you're back, still in the valley, still brushing off imaginary sand from your sleeves, as if the deserts clung to you overnight. The air feels cooler now, but heavier, like it knows what's coming. You're standing just outside the entrance to the tomb, and the breeze isn't just wind, it's whispers. Just months after that spectacular discovery, in April 1923, the first death strikes.
Lord Carnarvon, the British aristocrat who funded the excavation, is in Cairo and suddenly he's ill. A mosquito bite on his cheek becomes infected, fever sets in, then pneumonia. Within days he's gone, dead at 56. And here's where it
gets juicy in the worst possible way. The moment he dies, the lights supposedly go out in Cairo. At the exact same time, his dog Susie, loyal and fluffy 3,000 miles away in England, lets out a long, eerie howl and drops dead. Coincidence? Sure. But let's not pretend your skin didn't crawl just a little. You stand now among murmuring staff and a panicked press. The curse of the Pharaoh explodes across headlines like a sandstorm of superstition. One paper screams, "Death
comes for the defilers." Another, "Ancient tomb takes first revenge." Try not to roll your eyes, but
part of you is listening. Howard Carter doesn't buy any of it. He's rational, methodical, and frankly, grumpy about the media circus. He insists there's no curse, no mummy's wrath. In fact, he points out that he's still alive and fine. Thank you very much. But then again, he also refuses to sleep in the tomb. Just saying. Meanwhile, more oddities pile up. A canary Carter kept, meant to symbolize good luck, is found dead in its cage, swallowed by a cobra. That's not metaphor, that's Tuesday in Egypt. But the symbolism isn't lost on anyone. Cobras were symbols of divine protection for pharaohs. What was it doing in his house? You're not superstitious, probably. But every time a gust of desert wind howls through a tent flap, you glance over your shoulder, more deaths follow. A radiologist who took X-rays of the mummy dies of a mysterious illness. A visitor to the tomb drops dead after returning home. The man who X-rayed Tut's skull, who first noticed the peculiar hole at the base, dies young too. Not all these deaths are dramatic, but they add up, quietly, uneasily. And then there's George J. Gould, an American financier who toured the tomb. Seemed healthy. Within days, high fever, gone. Arthur Mace, a member of Carter's team, also succumbs to
illness. You start counting fingers. 6, 7, 8.
The list isn't long, but it's oddly specific. Youngish, healthy-ish, all linked to the tomb, the pattern subtle, like a bad feeling you can't shake. Still, skeptics point out, correctly, that Carter himself lives another 16 years, that most of the team die in old age. But by now, the idea of the curse has taken hold. It's not about data. It's about dread. And let's pause on a weirder detail, shall we? A strange rumor circulates among locals that Carter's team had inscribed a curse above the tomb's entrance, purely for drama. Something theatrical like, "They who enter this sacred tomb shall swift destruction meet." Carter later denies it, but by then the story's gone viral, 1920s style. You know, gossip in cafes and awkward telegrams with extra exclamation marks. Oh, and about Tut himself, you finally get a good look at the poor kid, not the glorious golden death mask version. They didn't bury him looking like a Bed Bath and Beyond deity. No, the real Tut is frail. His body was oddly charred, like it had been burned inside the sarcophagus. Some scientists say it was a spontaneous chemical reaction with the burial oils and linen. Others say it's a mystery no one's solved. Yet, also, he had a club foot, possibly scoliosis, likely walked with a cane. In fact, his tomb had over 130 of them. Yes, 130 canes. That's not a subtle hint. It's basically a walking stick storage unit with a mummy inside. Some historians think Tut was the product of inbreeding. His parents were siblings, after all. Genetics wasn't exactly a priority in royal matchmaking, which may explain why. He died young, possibly from a leg injury gone septic, or malaria, or both. Again, historians still argue about that. You walk through these theories like moving through fog, each one plausible, none fully satisfying. But one thing's clear. This wasn't the glowing legacy of a mighty ruler. Tut's burial was hurried, almost accidental. And now, in death, he's more powerful than he ever was in life. The public doesn't know these things, of course. All they see is the golden mask, the statues, the chariots. The boy king becomes a symbol of Egypt's lost glory, exoticized and sold to the West like spiritual incense. Tourists buy tiny scarabs, kids dress as pharaohs for Halloween, and meanwhile more people connected to the tomb get mysteriously ill. Some of it, you suspect, is imagination. Or maybe suggestion? Like when someone sneezes and suddenly you think you're catching something too, but there's a kernel of tension that won't leave. You can't quite laugh it off anymore. You remember the words scrawled in a dusty notebook found in Carter's quarters. Nothing dramatic, just a passing mention. The tomb has a presence.
One that watches. It is not malevolent, but it does not forget. That's not exactly comforting. And while the newspapers feast on stories of vengeful spirits and ancient plagues, the real mystery, what happened to Tut, why he was buried in
a patchwork tomb, why his body was damaged, is left to scholars who argue like caffeinated cats. Still, the damage is done. The tomb's opened, the world has peered in, and whatever lay sleeping there. It's awake now. You glance again at the wall paintings, the bright ochre, the gods with falcon heads, the path of stars meant to guide the soul. But your mind keeps circling back to something simpler, something smaller, a bite, a fever, a whisper. Then silence. You turn to leave the tomb chamber, but for just a second it feels like the paintings blink, like Osiris himself watches you go, and you swear, somewhere. Deep behind you in the tunnel, you hear footsteps that don't belong to anyone living. You wake up inside a library. Or maybe it's a newsroom. It smells like fresh ink, overworked brains, and cheap tobacco. Basically, 1920s media heaven. Piles of paper tower like pyramids of their own, and men in suspenders shout headlines across.
Rooms while pounding typewriters like they're trying to conjure ghosts. You're watching the world react, one dramatic paragraph at a time.
Because the curse of the pharaoh isn't just a spooky story now, it's a brand. And oh boy, does it sell. Reporters, who until last week could barely spell Tutankhamun, are now self-proclaimed experts on ancient Egypt and spiritual
vengeance. They spin everything. Mysterious illnesses, dead birds, fainting tourists. If someone sneezes within a 5-mile radius of a sarcophagus, it gets a headline. New victim of the tomb.
You see one particular article about a French Egyptologist who tripped on temple stairs and broke his ankle. The paper calls it another tragic strike of the curse. Meanwhile, the guy's only curse was leather shoes with zero traction. The public eats it up. London high society starts hosting curse parties complete with incense, mock tombs and mummified hors d'oeuvres. Someone even writes a jazz tune called Pharaoh Blues. It's catchy, weirdly romantic if you ignore the lyrics about eternal suffering. And here's where it gets bizarre. Perfumes. Yes, perfumes. Legend spreads that during the unsealing of Tutankhamun's tomb, a distinct floral scent drifted out, lotus mostly, an intoxicating, sweet, ancient smell. Carter himself never officially mentions it, but soon luxury brands jump on, it like vultures on a camel. Bottles labelled Essence of the Pharaoh and Sands of Tut flood upscale shops in Paris and New York. Rich people pay a fortune to dab cursed cologne behind their ears, and some of them get headaches. One woman claims she fainted in the opera, another says her cat ran away after she wore it. Clearly, supernatural consequences. Of course, skeptics try to slow the frenzy. Scholars publish dry papers explaining that decomposition gases are natural.
Resins can create odd scents in sealed tombs. No magic, just chemistry. But let's be real, No one wants to hear about mold when they can whisper about ghost flowers. You spend your days now flitting between Cairo hotels and British drawing rooms, catching snippets of overheard theories and increasingly dramatic tales.
One American tourist insists she saw a translucent figure near the tomb site. He had gold eyes, she says, and he was humming. You try to suppress a laugh. Gold eyes, really? But late that night, as you lie in bed, the silence hums, too loudly, just slightly, like distant chanting that won't quite fade. Carter, ever the rationalist, grows more irritable. He hates the circus the tomb has become. He bans journalists from the inner chambers. The site becomes locked down, guarded, but that only adds fuel to the fire. What's he hiding? Is the real curse still sealed inside? And here's a detail you haven't heard before. One of Carter's assistants kept a diary. In it, he mentions something odd, an incident where the team found a clay tablet etched with an unfamiliar script deep in a side niche. The writing didn't match any known hieroglyphs. Carter had it removed quickly and forbade any photos. The team assistant writes, "It was warm to the touch. The men were frightened. We heard knocking that night, like tapping from behind stone." That passage, it never saw the light of day until decades later. Historians still argue whether the tablet existed, or if the assistant, under stress and heat stroke, just imagined it. But he was transferred off the project soon after, sent to Alexandria, quietly. You can't help but raise an eyebrow. Meanwhile, back in Europe, even Freud joins the conversation. Yes, that Freud. He claims the obsession with mummies reveals subconscious guilt over colonialism and the West's theft of ancient culture. No,
One listens.
probably because he also suggested the Sphinx was a maternal symbol, and by then people had moved on to theories involving Atlantis and aliens. As for you, you keep drifting between curiosity and caution. Something about the tomb has wrapped.
Around your mind, it's not just the deaths, it's the way people change after entering, the way their eyes flick toward shadows.
The way they touch their chest unconsciously as if checking for a heartbeat. One night, in your half-sleep, you hear a conversation between two porters outside your hotel. They're whispering in Arabic, but one word keeps repeating. Sha'aban. You look it up later. It means the veil.
Not the literal fabric kind, but the one between the worlds. Apparently, the locals believe the tomb sits on a crossing point, a fault in reality where the afterlife bleeds through, a place meant to stay sealed. You start remembering detail.
That felt small before, like how the tomb had been buried under rubble from another tomb, almost hidden on purpose. Like how Tut's name was wiped from official records for generations. He wasn't just forgotten, he was erased. Some think that means he was cursed in life, not just in death, that his name wasn't meant to survive. And now that it has, well, you finally visit the Egyptian museum where Tut's golden mask now sits behind thick glass under sterile lighting. But even with security cameras and velvet ropes, something doesn't feel safe. The mask stares forward with blank, heavy serenity. It's beautiful, astonishing really. But you can't shake the feeling that it's not a face, it's a warning. And just when you're about to leave, a little girl nearby tugs her mother's sleeve and says something that makes your blood run cold. "Mommy," she whispers, pointing at the mask. That man smiled at me. You don't sleep much that night. Even the fan's white noise doesn't drown out the whispers. You're beginning to think this story was never about treasure. It's about being watched. You've left the museums and the dusty tents behind now, but somehow the air still smells like sandstone and embalming resin, like old breath trapped in a sealed jar. It clings to you even here, aboard a ship, Mid-Atlantic, 1930s now. You're following the story as it crosses oceans, slips into parlours and lecture halls, slithers through smoky clubs and polite dinner parties. Tutankhamun has gone global. Not just the gold, not just the myth, but the paranoia. You're in London next, in a candlelit salon with velvet chairs and more orchids than a botanical garden. Spiritualists have gathered, yes, those charming Victorians with their seances, spirit trumpets, and glassy-eyed certainty. They're convinced the tomb's curse is real, not because of the headlines, but because their guides, spirits with names like Lady Elvira and Rahem the Wise, say so. You watch as one medium channels the soul of an ancient priest. His voice drops a few octaves. He hisses. He warns that Tut's soul is unsettled and thirsts for rest. It's dramatic, also deeply inconvenient for those hoping to open another tomb next season. And yet something about the room changes, the temperature maybe, or the way the candles flicker in perfect unison. You blink hard.
Surely coincidence, surely. But the strangeness isn't limited to parlours and pseudoscience. In 1934, Sir Archibald Douglas Reed dies. You don't know him? That's okay. He's the doctor who X-rayed the mummy in 1925. He didn't open the tomb.
Didn't touch the treasures, didn't even enter the burial chamber, just took some scans. Clinical, cold, but he's still gone, suddenly and without cause. The papers barely report it, but those tracking the so-called curse, they add him to the tally, and there's more. The man who catalogued Tut's treasures, Richard Bethel, dies in bed under suspicious circumstances. No trauma, no clear illness, just stops. His father, Lord Westbury, throws himself from a building weeks later, leaves a note blaming the tomb business. That's what he calls it, the tomb business. You sit with that phrase a while. Sounds like a bad noir film, but it also feels accurate. This wasn't just archaeology anymore, it was drama. Profit, death. And somewhere in the background of all this, the treasures themselves start moving, from Cairo to London to temporary exhibits in Paris, and eventually, decades later, even to America. But we'll get there. For now, you're wandering through a private archive, the kind no one advertises. Yellowed papers, personal notes, receipts from the tomb's cataloguing process. And here, in a trembling hand, a forgotten journal entry from a junior assistant. It's not just the body, it's the arrangement. Every object faces west toward death. But the statues, one of them wasn't there before, I'm sure of it. One statue moved or appeared. Or maybe he just miscounted. But then, why does the next page have a single sentence? I've returned it. And nothing else. You close the journal. Your fingers tingle. Later, you hear whispers that some of the tomb's artifacts are being returned discreetly. Not because they were stolen, not even because of politics, but because of fear. Quiet donations to Cairo's museum with no fanfare. One item, a scarab amulet, allegedly caused 4 accidents before it even reached London. Another, a necklace, was returned with a cryptic note. My wife hasn't slept in months, neither have I. You start to see a pattern. These objects carry more than historical weight. People touch them, and something touches back. Now here's something almost no one talks about. The dreams. Multiple people connected to the tomb, workers, scholars, guards, report similar nightmares. Deserts with no sun. A black jackal that
never blinks. A voice they can't understand but feel deep in their ribs. One woman describes floating over her own body while hearing foreign chanting.
When she wakes up, her ears are bleeding. Doctors say stress, hallucination. But you've read enough now to know that stress doesn't explain synchronized dreams across 3 continents. Even Carter, Mr. Rationale, writes in one letter, "The dreams persist. They are not frightening, but they do not belong to me. Still not scared? Good. Hold that thought, because in 1939, one of the final team members to work on the tomb dies just weeks before World War II begins. It's poetic, in a terrible way, as if Tut's vengeance has played itself out, just in time for humanity to unleash newer horrors. Some say the curse ends there. A neat chapter closed. Others say no, it only went dormant, waiting for the next."
Unsealing. And you? You start wondering what you've opened simply by listening this long. Remember the golden mask?
You swear you saw it blink once, and now, late at night, alone with your thoughts, you can't help but notice the shadows in your room don't behave quite like they used to. One of them lingers too long near the corner. The one by the closet. You know the one. Oh, and those odd dreams you've been having lately? Might want to start writing those down. You've left the ship, the archives, the salons, and now you're stepping into something colder, sharper. Glass cases, climate controls, polite security guards with dead eyes. Welcome to the museum circuit of the late 20th century. Tutankhamun, now fully global, is an A-list celebrity. If celebrities were dead, teenagers wrapped in resin-soaked linen. The traveling exhibitions begin. Glittering tours through the world's most pristine institutions. People queue for hours in New York, Tokyo, Berlin. They weep in front of the golden mask. They whisper, reverent, as though at a funeral. Some faint. Some laugh nervously, but all leave with one thing in common, a tightness behind the eyes, a buzzing just below the skin. You're in Los Angeles now. It's 1978. The King Tut exhibit is the biggest thing since sliced disco. There's merch, there's a soundtrack, there's even Steve Martin doing a parody on Saturday Night Live. You chuckle, yeah, it's funny. Born in Arizona, moved to Babylonia. But then you remember that someone had a seizure during the live taping, back row, audience member. No known medical history. The curse, apparently, is getting into showbiz. At night, when the museum closes and the guards make their rounds, odd reports begin. Not from tabloids, internal logs. One guard quits after seeing the reflection of the mask move differently than the object itself. Another hears footsteps behind him in a sealed gallery. The sound of sandals on marble. Papyrus smooth whispers just out of earshot. One night, a temperature sensor spikes suddenly to 41 degrees, 105 degrees. No fire. No broken heater. Just one moment of blistering heat directly in front of the mask. And you know what's really strange? That floral smell is back, yes, that same scent described in the tomb decades earlier. A mix of lotus and something older. Something wet and dark. A botanist on staff claims she caught it too. Says it's impossible. It doesn't match any compound they've used. No air fresheners, no perfumes allowed near the exhibit. She resigns. A week later, says she's sleeping through her own life. You don't know what that means, but it doesn't sound restful. Now, while most of the world is watching the glitter, a few curious minds are digging deeper. You meet a retired chemist who once helped analyze some of the artifacts. He lowers his voice and tells you something he shouldn't. The oils found on one of the ceremonial daggers don't match anything on record. Not modern, not ancient. Just other. He smiles like it's a joke, but his eyes are tired. And then there's the boy. In 1980, a 7-year-old who attended the exhibit begins drawing strange symbols on his bedroom walls. Repeatedly. His parents think it's just kids being kids, until a visiting uncle, an amateur Egyptologist, nearly faints. The boy's symbols match obscure regional pre-dynastic scripts never shown to the public, some only recently uncovered, some not yet deciphered. They paint over the walls. He scratches them into the floorboards. Doctors blame media influence. Too much TV, but the boy insists he's never seen them before. He says he dreams them. In the dream, he's inside a room made of bone. A man with no eyes tells him what to write. You decide not to visit that exhibit again, and yet the public doesn't stop. Crowds surge. Ticket sales explode. Egypt, burdened with growing debt and international pressure, continues to lend out the treasures. Politics wrap around profit. Museums argue global appreciation. Some scholars protest. Others sign the shipping papers with quiet hands. But something feels wrong. You're reading a late 80s academic piece now, privately circulated, never published. The author's name is blacked out. But the title sticks with you. Artifacts as Anchors. Re-examining the ritual function of pharaohic gold. Its theory that certain objects weren't meant to glorify the dead, but to bind them, to fix the soul in place, to hold a consciousness inside time. A divine trap, which means taking these items away might unbind the trap, might let something walk. Historians still debate that, of course. Some dismiss the theory entirely, calling it romantic mysticism. Others point out strange upticks in sleep disorders and mood shifts among museum staff. But no one can agree on the real danger, if there is one. You ask the author, now in hiding, possibly under a new name, what they believe. They reply, some tombs were made for memory. Others were made for prison. The mistake was assuming. We knew which. That night in your hotel, you hear a scratching sound under your bed. Not rats, not bugs. Something more methodical, like a fingernail on old wood. You don't look. You just lie still and pray it's not coming from inside the floorboards. Meanwhile, King Tut's legend continues. He's on stamps, lunchboxes, cereal ads, a Las Vegas. Hotel builds a faux tomb, walk through with mood lighting and piped-in mystical music. People go in laughing, they exit quiet. Some say the atmosphere is just that good, others claim to feel watched. Even now, as you sit listening to this story, as the air shifts ever so slightly around you, you might start noticing a presence. Just a thickness in the room. A density that wasn't there an hour ago, something leaning in, still curious? Good. Because it's almost time to go back. You've followed Tutankhamun across sands, across seas, through seances and spotlights. And now, as your steps echo down a modern hallway, sterile, clinical, concrete, you realize something unsettling. You've arrived back where it all started. Not the tomb, exactly, but Cairo, a research facility just outside the city, 2010. An unremarkable building, with fingerprint locks, flickering lights, and the faint smell of freezer burn. You're here because someone finally decided to scan the mummy again. This time with 21st century tech, CT scans, DNA analysis, microscopic imaging, the works. And guess what? The mystery doesn't go away. It deepens. First, the physical state. Tutankhamun's body wasn't just damaged by time or robbers. No, the scans reveal something else. His chest is completely shattered and missing. Heart, sternum, ribs on the left side, all gone. Not removed during embalming, destroyed, burned. Some researchers suggest a botched mummification. maybe even spontaneous combustion caused by chemical reactions in the resin. Spontaneous combustion? You'd laugh, but the body's blackened, charred, like it cooked from the inside. You imagine that, eternal rest in a slow oven, and you shiver. Others argue it was political, that someone wanted to erase his heart, the sacred seat of judgment, in the afterlife. That Tut wasn't just buried, he was punished. Historians still argue about it. Some say it was an accident, others say assassination. There are even whispers that Tut was cursed before his death, left to rot in a makeshift
tomb that was never meant for a king. You press your palm against the glass of the lab.
On the other side, a forensic pathologist is holding one of the pharaoh's vertebrae in gloved hands. She frowns. Deformities, she murmurs. More than expected. The tests reveal genetic disease, possibly inbreeding, a clubfoot, bone necrosis, malaria. The boy king lived in pain, likely limping, barely able to stand on his own. The golden image we're sold? It was a lie. The mask covered a sick, fragile child thrust onto a throne too soon, surrounded by predators. And yet, he
ruled, he commanded.
He cursed, apparently. So here's the twist. The curse might not have come from Tutankhamun. What if it came for him? You flip through field notes. A 2012 paper references inscriptions in the Valley of the Kings that hint at unrest among the priests. Symbols scratched out, names overwritten, heresy. One theory, rare, fringe but fascinating, is that Tut's tomb wasn't meant to honor him at all. It was a magical snare, a place to trap the lingering spirit of Akhenaten, his controversial father the heretic, who tried to destroy Egypt's gods. The evidence? Incomplete funerary texts, the use of Amana motifs where they shouldn't be. And that one missing statue, remember? The one that wasn't there before? A form of Akhenaten's likeness with the eyes gouged out. It shouldn't have been in Tut's tomb. But it was. And here's where things start looping back. Some objects from the tomb, amulets, statues, even the mask, were all designed with dual purposes. To guide the dead or to bind them. Scholars believe a ritual may have been reversed. Instead of protecting Tut's soul, it anchored another, which means you might not have been following Tutankhamun's curse at all. You might have been tracking something older, hungrier, and it's still moving. Because now we're in the present day. 2020's the Grand Egyptian Museum, built to house the full Tutankhamun collection in one place, is nearing completion. It's massive, gleaming, designed like a temple. But delays keep stacking up. Years pass, rumors swirl, construction accidents, inexplicable power failures, a freak lightning strike that shorted out 3 backup generators simultaneously. The kind of stuff insurance agents don't like writing down. When you visit, you see it in the workers' eyes. The way they avoid looking directly at the sealed crates. How no one wants to be alone near the burial artifacts. The project is historic, but it feels haunted. Still the world waits, tourists ready to line up, cameras poised. The story of Tutankhamun will be told again. But something's different now. It's not awe, it's not gold, it's dread. And here's where it gets personal. Because you, yes you, have carried this story from the sands of Egypt to the screen in your lap. And stories, especially ones drenched in death and devotion, have a way of clinging. You've imagined the tomb. You've pictured the mask. You've thought about the heat, the shadows, the scent of something buried, And in doing so, you've let it in, just a little. There's no curse, maybe. No ancient priest with a scroll and a smirk. But there is memory. There is weight. There is a door in your mind that wasn't open before. Now it is. And maybe tonight, as you lie down, you'll dream of sand, of flickering torches, of narrow halls that go deeper than they should. You'll hear sandals in the distance, not running, not rushing, just walking, closer, steady, heavy. You'll turn over in bed, and in the dark, you'll see the faint outline of a mask, gold, still, watching, and
Then
only the hum of the fan, the softness of your blanket, the safety of your room, your breath, slow, steady. It's over now. Let the tomb close. Let the sand settle. Let the night hold you. End of script. Sweet dreams.